So, about Resident Evil Village. Alright, Resi 8, let's see what's under the hood, shall we? It really didn't take long after Resi 7 to release this game, did it? I guess when you've mastered your game engine and already have a tremendous amount of usable assets, that sort of thing can happen. Anyhow, much like Resi 7, this game stars Ethan Winters, even though Ethan isn't a real member of STARS. Hey? See what I did there? You get it? Whatever. So, anyway, Ethan has moved on from the events of Resi 7 and was moved to Europe by Chris Redfield. He's raising his daughter, Rose, with his wife, Mia, in a quiet life at this point. So then we find out that the final boss and primary antagonist of this game can shapeshift, and she kidnapped Mia and took her place at some point to get a hold of Rose, because I guess Rose has some sort of crazy power or something. So Chris knew this for whatever reason, so he tried to kill the fake Mia and didn't tell Ethan why. Then he kidnapped Rose, and he didn't tell Ethan why. Then he kidnapped Ethan himself, and he didn't tell Ethan why. And at that point, he took them all away in the same vehicle. So the final boss, who was Mia at the time, woke up, killed everyone, took Rose, and broke out of the truck, which was stranded in the middle of the woods at the time for some reason, and coincidentally close to the village. Ethan wakes up and creepily makes his way to the village itself, and off we go, into the game. This game follows the same footsteps as its predecessor in the way that it plays, as Capcom got back to its roots after the off-the-rails and out-of-genre failure that was Resi 6, at least financially speaking. Capcom knows that it has a winner with this formula, so I think this is what they're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. So I'm pretty pleased with this game overall as a single-player campaign, and that's a good thing. It's not super long, as it took me about 10 hours to beat it, and that was just with me trying to collect all that I could and pacing myself. Additionally, it can be beaten in a much faster fashion if you combine the knowledge of a previous playthrough, first of all, not trying to collect everything, second of all, squashing the unnecessary exploration, third of all, using an unlimited ammo weapon that you get from the extra content shop, fourth of all, and perhaps playing on a lower difficulty, fifth of all. And if you do all that, it's reasonable to think that someone can beat the game in an afternoon if all that was the case, but that's not the point. This is a very curated experience by Capcom. Think about it as the exact opposite of a game like, say, Breath of the Wild, where random things can happen all the time, and unexpected events are why people will be playing that game even after the sequel's released. So that's just kind of where that game goes, and this game goes in the opposite direction. So when I say that this game is curated, I mean almost every event in the game is exactly as Capcom intended. In fact, this would probably make a better movie than a video game. The gameplay itself is so cinematic that it seems like, that it could also just straight up be a movie. I'd watch it. So anyways, there's these four lords, Mipha, Daruk, Urbosa, and Rivali. And they... Wait, what? Say that again? Okay, sorry. What I meant to say was there's these four lords. Lady Alcina Dimitrescu, Donna Beneviento and Angie, Salvatore Moreau, and Carl Heisenberg. They are the most successful, or at the very least most powerful results of the experiments performed by Mother Miranda, the final boss. So I'm to understand that they take these little nasty mold fetuses called Kadu, I don't know how to pronounce it, however you would do that, and implants it into their victims. Most turn into lichens, which makes up most of the enemies in the game, but those four specifically turn into the game's bosses. I guess the reason she did that is because her baby daughter died, like 100 years ago, and instead of letting it go, she decided to be an immortal cult leader obsessed with finding a fitting vessel to bring her daughter back to life with. It's kinda hard for me not to keep explaining the plot and start getting into other points, so I apologize. The game is just so damn plot heavy and very story driven. Also, most of this isn't even clear until the ending of the game, so this is what I got out of it when I put it all together. Moving on though. So Ethan is absolutely nuts. He could take so much pain without a scratch and without much more than a grunt most of the time. That makes him exactly the type of father that I would want to come slay some lords and rescue me if I were Rose. And despite being the star of X-Men Origins, Ethan Winters, aka Mold Man, aka Regenerating Reggie, he can somehow hit his limit and die. Granted, he has some help from his magic super water that seems to facilitate the regeneration of everything from being impaled to putting his freaking severed hand back on. It's nuts. Although he can't ever get his pinky and ring finger on his left hand to regenerate for whatever reason, so that's a little frustrating. But whatever, I digress. In a place like this, you need all the friends you can get, and believe me, he doesn't get many of them. Most just die very, very soon after meeting our boy Regrowth Randy, aka Ethan. If only they knew ahead of time just how poisonous his very presence can be, they might have avoided an untimely demise. Even Ethan himself acknowledges this at some point.
Why is everyone dying on me? This is just too much.
The only friend that seems to avoid this fate repeatedly on this journey is the Duke, the shopkeep of the game. I don't know, man. Something's going on with this guy. I don't know. I don't like it. He's unsettling. Makes me uncomfortable. Something's off about him, man. I don't know. But anyway, it seems like he can teleport around the whole game world, which is alarming, to say the least. And it also seems like he's the anti-Ethan in both the size of their bodies, I mean, look at them, and where not only does he not have a target on his back like Ethan seems to, but it also seems like the entire world is unaware of his very presence. And how is that even possible? I mean, look at him for Miranda's sake. Ugh, so aggravating. So, moving on. You visit the lords in order of first a crazy big vampire lady, second is a crazy puppet lady, third is a crazy fish dude, and fourth is the crazy gear guy. This game does its thing in regards to making a pure Resident Evil experience with puzzles, tense moments, and non-stop danger. The gimmick in the first area is strong and multifaceted. It's well made to be sure, so it has a mix of puzzles and item finding for progression. All the while, you have to avoid Lady Dimitrescu's 3 daughters, who all look the same, sound the same, and have the same powers. So I thought they were just the same person whose one power was to clone themselves, and also bugs. But anyway, they also seem to be vampiric, so there's that, and that's in the traditional sense anyway, meaning no sunlight. Finally, you gotta watch out for Lady Dimitrescu herself, as she wanders the halls after some point, and is even scripted to walk through doors at certain points, no matter what. So it could be really annoying, especially in multiple playthroughs, knowing she will, for sure, show up at a point that is not a cutscene and forces you to backtrack at the same spot on every playthrough. Like when coming down this elevator, for instance. It's extra annoying. It all wraps up nice and neatly, though, in a boss fight, and it's very epic and it feels daunting, in fact, almost like you have no chance to win. But once you actually do, and once it's over, I had a strange feeling like the game should be over. It felt like a real climax. I don't know if that's good or bad though. But either way, moving on. So, before I discuss the next leg of the video, I'd like to quickly go over my own personal moments that I'd like to call nope moments. I typically express these moments in horror movies. I'll be watching a horror movie, and in the name of self-preservation, if you witness something that is so clearly and obviously a huge threat to your potential well-being and an absolutely colossal red flag, what you want to do is turn the fuck around and avoid the entire situation altogether. You freaking find another way. Period. I really don't care what the stakes are. You turn around and you avoid it like the plague. So, here's a quick compilation of that, because this game has a good amount of moments like that. More than what I'm going to show, in fact. So, nope. Nope. No. Nuh-uh. No, sir. Obviously. God. So yeah, that's certainly something to think about the next time you either watch a horror movie or the next time you're presented with a real life situation, God forbid, of obvious moments where the Reaper clearly awaits. Now, the next leg of the game strips Ethan away from his guns, healing items, key items, etc., etc., and as a result, they do you the favor of removing all the enemies from the area as well. This may sound weird, but it actually works if you're foregoing all the action for pure horror. This isn't necessarily for everybody though, as it takes away what could arguably be considered one of the game's strengths. So, the puppet lady has the ability to make plants secrete an invisible airborne toxin that causes folks to hallucinate. So they use that to make Ethan think he lost all of his stuff, even though he most likely really didn't. And then she curates a series of pointless puzzles and clues to help Ethan get to her. At some point, she even asks him to come find her when he finally has free reign of the house. and that's an absolutely terrible idea. She's more or less asking to die. He finds her and obviously puts her out of her misery, which ends the illusion, so that's that, I guess. Oh, and before she does that, she makes sure to torture both Ethan and the player with this godforsaken thing. So, yeah, I never let that damn thing catch me, so I don't know what happens when it does, so let me know in the comments what happens if you're watching this video and you have that information. I'd appreciate it. Now then, some more stuff happens, blah blah blah, and you got the fish guy to deal with next. So Moreau is the black sheep of the Lords, because despite his power, he obviously didn't end up as intelligent or as attractive as any of the other Lords. All the Lords make you work for the different pieces of your daughter's chopped up body parts kept in flasks, which I forgot to mention earlier, but that is what Ethan is mainly working towards the entire game. Moreau is too dumb and basically lets you take it before his part of the game even starts. Like, he was the only Lord that failed to see you coming or something, and failed to have a bunch of BS for you to slog through. And now, make no mistake, the game still needs to happen, and it still is what it is. So what they do is make it seem like all the BS you go through after that was not set up by Moreau ahead of time, but actually accidentally happened the spur of the moment. Realistically, Ethan can use the open-endedness of real life to get out of there almost immediately after he gets his rose flask, but instead, he simply doesn't because the game needs to happen. Simple enough. He spends most of your time together throwing up and transformed into his monster form. That's where he does the bulk of his damage as Ethan tries to make his way across the lake, which is where Moreau is at his most powerful. Well, consider that another nope moment for me, because I would most certainly not come anywhere close to a body of water around that guy. Assuming I missed my chance to simply leave after getting my rose flask, but that's neither here nor there because it's not going to freaking happen. There's not much else to say other than that it ends in a boss fight, as it should, and that also melts away a ton of your ammo, as it does, just like every other big fight in the game. They give you a grid pattern to run around on while you fight him as you try not to get backed into corners while you blow him up. It's simple enough. He's gross, and we're moving on. After him, you have to deal with Nicolas Cage, aka Heisenberg. Seriously, if they make a movie of this game, that is perfect casting. Please don't miss your opportunity to do that, Hollywood. Thank you. Anyway, he's the most powerful of the Lords if you don't count Miranda herself, and he shows you that when he kidnaps you in the first leg of the game, but continues to show you that as you move through his specific part of the game. Now, this part feels not correct to me. I don't know. So he leads you to his factory, which doesn't seem like it belongs anywhere near the village, and is truly the only one where I couldn't wait for it to end the entire time. So it was pretty interesting having him try to recruit Ethan to help him take down Miranda, but after that, I just had a crappy time in this weird factory that doesn't belong here and kept getting annoyed by everything in it. So keep in mind that it was still a well-designed area of the game, and they didn't skimp on what makes this game great. I just didn't like the setting, and I kind of wish they chose like a steel mining facility that has both outdoor and mineshaft sections. I would have enjoyed that more. They kind of explored that a little bit with the Moreau section, but they didn't fully go all in on it, and it would have made a more fitting setting for Heisenberg's area. And the steel mill mining shaft thing also seems like it's something that you would realistically find in the village as well, and you actually seem to in other areas, so that makes sense. Anyway, Ethan eventually gets through, obviously, and you have to fight this weird damn propeller-faced monstrosity of sin first. I gotta say, I really hate this thing, as it takes a completely absurd amount of effort to take this thing down, frankly. The first time it runs into a wall and the propellers start clanging off of a steel wall, then they should break. That should be it for this thing, and it should be defeated. But, you know, the game has to happen and whatnot, so whatever. Heisenberg even says himself in one of the lore-building readables in the game that he used a quote-unquote cheap propeller, which insinuates that it is of low quality and is probably all rusty and whatnot and gonna fall apart soon, but whatever. So anyways, you slog through that thing, and then what is this? More random crap to make diversity happen in the gameplay, you say. Okay, fine, I'll bite. Ethan gets in this weird death machine thing that is coincidentally made out of the same crap that Heisenberg can't just Magneto you out of, and that's, I guess, just so convenient for the plot, and that's the kind of thing that just bothers me about this, but whatever. It's to the point where I'd consider that fact alone to be an ex machina, because what are the chances that it's just made out of material he can't control, and looks to be made out of material like metal? It's just stupid. This proves that Heisenberg is the strongest though, as the game is basically saying you can't even beat him without it. Fun fight though. I like it a little more than the others because you have unlimited ammo for the fight, mostly, and I happen to be a sucker for that sort of thing. He telegraphs his attacks, hard, and your block button works a lot better in this thing than it ever does when you're on foot. This thing moves and strafes far better than it has any business to, but that's because Ethan drives it real weird. I recommend watching the episode of Boundary Break by one of my favorite YouTubers, She Says, for the episode on Resi 8. You do get more details on what I'm talking about if you do, so give that a watch. It shows how Ethan is really controlling it, and then you can understand why it can move around the way that it does. So anyways, they take your beloved bullshit machine away from you, then make you use your own ammo for a little while, because of course it does. And then it gives you a little piece of the machine to finish him off for the final set piece of the fight, and it's just fun, good stuff. When the fight's over, then you are finally confronted by Miranda directly for the first time since she was Mia at the beginning of the game. At this point, I thought that she was going to give you whatever cutscene that we were destined for, and then that we were going to do a final area of the game that segued into the final boss fight, but that's not actually what ends up being the case here. There's a few weird moments of a cutscene that happens, and she shows off her shapeshifting a bit, including letting you know that she was the old lady the whole time. Who saw that coming? Which I suppose counts as a direct confrontation, but who knows. And huge spoilers ahead, by the way, as if my videos aren't already chock full of them. She proceeds to simply pull Ethan's heart from his chest, which kinda kills him. I don't know, I'm confused about it, but it puts him out of commission, which makes complete sense to me, of course, because that's my weakness too. Then she moves on. She could have done this at any time during the game, mind you, but, you know, the game needs to happen, so that's why I continue to say it. So for this next part, they just go full 95% Resi 6 as it turns into a full-fledged action game, foregoing all of the horror. The only 5% missing in that is that this is a first-person game still, so that's about it. Anyways, they give you a unreal amount of ammo and just let you go complete apeshit on the whole village itself, and use Chris Redfield, which is who you'll be playing as for this part, a unique arsenal to mow down enemies with ease, with the intent of finishing the job and blowing everything up. So Redfield and his squad are looking for a gigantic mold spore that caused all of this, called the Megamycete. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's the source of all of her power and all of these issues. He has a weapon that's basically the Hammer of Dawn from Gears of War, so he marks the target with a laser, and a bomb is promptly dropped on the target. This would be fun to use all the time, but that's not the world we live in, and of course they won't let you ever use that thing ever again. Chris mows down enemy after enemy, and the end goal is to do what Resident Evil endings do best: blow everything up with a gigantic nuke-like bomb. First though, he has to, and in no particular order, thicken the plot, rescue Rose and Mia, and get him and his men out of the village and far enough away so they can actually pull the trigger on that. There is this minor issue of that big hairy hammer monster, Urias, or his twin clone brother, father, son, Urias. He was already killed by Ethan though at the beginning, at least that's what I thought, but whatever, I don't know what's going on with this game. Anyways, he gets through it all, and then Ethan decides that he wants to get up and keep fighting all of a sudden after that part, even though he has no beating heart in his chest. I told you guys before, man, Mold Man is nuts. So then, he makes his way to Miranda, and so commences the final boss fight of the game. Miranda is vulnerable to all weapons, but some are clearly more feasible than others. There's a feeling like she isn't really being hurt by anything because she doesn't really have a flinching animation for anything that you use on her, really, even explosives. So, no matter what you use, that's going to be a persistent problem. Dodging her attacks is super important because she hits like a truck, but that's not too hard, even though Ethan has no real ability to strafe. And that's just the kind of jank that they controlled with this particular game, unfortunately, to make it artificially more difficult. He's not very athletic, keep in mind. You just face her with explosions and try to get headshots with your smaller arms fired. This is a fitting final fight, and it's about the level of bullshit that you would expect from a final boss. She morphs into multiple forms, she uses a darkness cloak move like Murgo's Wet Nurse in Bloodborne, then the usual BS keeps happening. When you finally beat her, she goes down to my one true weakness, which is bullets. It's like kryptonite, I swear. It seems to be everybody's weakness. Now, I'm not convinced that she can beat Heisenberg 1v1 like the consensus seems to be, frankly, as his final form seems like it's kind of head and shoulders above hers. But it's whatever, I don't know. So, in assumption, Ethan sacrifices himself for the good of his daughter, Chris saves Rose and Mia and the day, as he's been doing since basically forever with his old ass, and then that's it. They bomb everything and they fly away, and the game just pretty much confirms that Ethan's story is over and you're probably gonna play as Rose in Resi 9, whatever. So that's my thoughts on the whole game. What are yours? Like and subscribe, also let me know in the comments. Why not?
Is that?
I told you to sit down.
No. Where is he? Chris? What have you done?
He's gone. I tried. He stayed so we could all escape. I'm sorry.
What did you want me to say? What did you want me to say? Because there's so many things that have four. What do you want me to say? The Abyss Watchers, Yorm the Giant, Aldrich, Devourer of Gods, the Twin Princes, Lothric and Lorien. And they'd be like, oh, whoops. I mean, Big Vampire Lady, Fish Guy, Gear Guy, and Puppet Chick. Is that what you wanted me to say? It's stupid, though. Like I said, there's so many things. And forlorn. Resident Evil Village is quite a good game by any metric, any stretch that you could think of as far as a single-player action horror experience. The controls are a bit clunky, as one might expect for a game of this genre. After all, they have to keep it challenging. So, well, I've certainly seen better, especially out of Capcom. See my Devil May Cry 5 video. It's certainly not a bad experience. That being said, I'll have to give this game a 4 out of 5. I'd like to thank you for staying so sexy on the line.